All right, Entree Architect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the Entree Architect Context and Clarity conversation for Thursday, September 22nd, 2022. That's a lot of twos. Welcome back. Glad you're here. As you get here, say hi. Let us know that you're here. Let us know where here is for you. Where are you joining this conversation from? If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect, or maybe the student of architecture. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need to know topics for the success of entrepreneur architects just like you. So thanks for joining us today. I'm looking at my screen here, and it would it would appear it's a little bit of a typo, I think, there, but it would appear that Ed Shannon is the first on the screen today, the first in the room, which means that he is the winner of today's John Kinney Memorial Crochet Bathtub Award. I think Ed means hello from Des Moines, Iowa, but you can
Hell
read whatever
is
you want
Des Moines,
to.
Iowa.
Welcome back, Ed.
I'm
Glad
just
you're
kidding.
here, friend. Welcome back from Des Moines. Jessica, welcome back from Los Angeles. She says, "Go Blue." You'll find this out very quickly that where our guest is from, and I think we're going to have more guests from the same location, but we actually have a contingent who are University of Michigan grads that are based in Los Angeles. So you may see some more hi from LA and Go Blue. Welcome back, Jessica. Tara, welcome from Ann Arbor. Glad you're joining us. Ed says that was a Freudian slip. Kurt, welcome back from Flint, Michigan, over there on Twitch. Chris Novelli from Massachusetts. Trinity, hi. Thanks for joining us today from the University of Michigan. And Christian from Ithaca, New York. Nahal, he's also joining from the University of Michigan, a master's student in architecture. Excellent. Glad you're joining us here today. Apparently, you're all getting graded on this, so glad you're joining us. Preserve that grade. Good for you. Glad that you're here. Joseph from University of Michigan, welcome. Let's see. Kurt says, I'm a USC grad now based in Michigan, but now we're in the Big Ten, so go figure. And Simran, welcome. Go Blue. That's it's great to have all of you here today. So if you are joining us right now, if you're on Facebook, and you're just typing away, you're commenting away, and you go, hey, why are my comments not showing up like Mitch's or Simran's or Urban Collab, which is Kurt or Joseph or Nahal or Christian or Trinity? It's because you are in a private Facebook group right now, and Facebook has some rules, some privacy policies that say that your name, your likeness, your comments can't leave those private groups unless you give them specific permission. So in order to solve that, there's a URL at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now. Open a new tab and type this into your browser window, chat.restream.io/FB, like Facebook. And a couple of clicks later, you can give Facebook permission to let your comments out of the group, and you will be showing up on the screen just like everybody else's. So if you're over there on Facebook and it's not working out for you, chat.restream.io/FB. And a reminder, you have to renew those permissions every once in a while. I don't know what the time period is, but they do expire at some point. So if it's not working, just give that a shot. Chat.restream.io/FB. John Jones is on Facebook. He's multitasking, trying to get out of Dodge for a family getaway, a long weekend. All right. Get that work done, John. Glad you're here, and I hope the long weekend is good for you. Chris says, I dropped out of the Clubhouse conversation too early this morning. I missed the weirdness. Yep, sorry, I had to drop out and speak to some pro practice classes, but I'm glad I've heard a little bit about the conversation, and I'm glad it kept going. Rod wants to know if androids dream of electronic sheep. I don't know. We may have learned that today. And Scott Thrift, welcome. He says it's a pleasant day on the bay. Welcome back from San Francisco, Scott. Glad you are here as well. Joining me, as always, for these Context and Clarity live conversations is Katharine MacPhail. Hi, Katharine.
Hi, Jeff. They're weird. We have weird activities here. I don't know if it's the lightning storms or what, but I may not be here the whole time. I will try. But I wanted to wish you happy fall because now it's actually fall. And I know I'm a pain about that, but we can't rush different seasons, I feel like. I got to stick to the dates.
All right. Well, it's a
Yep.
good day to separate or to celebrate fall then. And actually
It is a good
here,
day.
so this is Catherine and I when we talk weather because our weather gets to Catherine. The weather where I am gets to Catherine about a day and a half or so later.
Yeah.
So fall is coming, Catherine.
Oh, is it?
Thir-
Okay.
30-degree difference today from yesterday. So um,
Mm, that's
enjoy when it gets
that's
there.
too bad for me because I don't have any heat. You mean colder? It's
Yeah.
going to be
No,
colder
it's
tomorrow?
only like 65.
Oh, okay. It's not
Yeah,
bad.
but low in the 40s maybe. So a
It's okay.
blanket, a
I'll
blanket will
just wear
do.
my stocking cap to bed
There you go.
tonight.
Seasons are changing.
Yep.
Let me see. Hopefully, I don't butcher this name too bad. Aditya, welcome. Glad you're joining from University of Michigan. And anybody else, if I butcher your name, first of all, I apologize. Second of all, just put in the comments how to actually pronounce your name, and I'll give it a better shot. Chad, welcome back from Atlanta. He says seasons. Yeah, Atlanta, you get some seasons every once in a while in Atlanta.
Mm.
And Ed says his dad was a Wolverine, so go blue. All right. Chad says it's the second summer in Atlanta right now.
You know,
You can
I'm going
have
to
it.
say Michigan's winning today, and I think we'll just let them win. That's it. We won't even keep track
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. I don't think we need to count. I think University of Michigan specifically
Hmm.
is definitely in the lead for most representatives today. Mark R. LePage is listening in from the road via Route 81 in Pennsylvania. Welcome back, Mark. Glad you're joining us today as well. Jessica says Michigan always wins. That could spark quite a debate. So we're just going to leave that there. We're going to leave that comment right there. If you're playing Ball State, yeah, you would probably win. But go blue. Good for you. All right, let's jump into this. We've got someone back in the green room that may be running out of green M&Ms by now. I don't know if you didn't know that we stock our green room with green peanut M&Ms for all of our guests, and they've been back there so long at this point that they may be running out. So we need to bring them out. And let's kick this conversation off today. Our guest is an architect, an author, an educator. Obviously, their class is chiming in today, which is fantastic. You're going to be graded on this. Don't forget. An educator and a futurist. He's exploring the intersection between emerging technology, the practice of architecture, and the future of construction. He's a co founder of the architectural practice SPAN, a director of the Architecture and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory at Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Design at the University of Michigan, and author of Neural Architecture, Design and Artificial Intelligence, and Machine Hallucinations, Architecture and Artificial Intelligence. Dr. Matias del Campo, welcome back. I should say, welcome back to Context and Clarity Live.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Katharine. Thanks a lot for having me again. It's a huge pleasure.
Oh, it's fantastic to have you here. When you were here before, we were in the middle of a lot of conversations here in Context and Clarity about different technologies, about metaverse and crypto and AI and different, I would say, sort of advanced technologies, especially where architects are concerned. And we had a fascinating conversation about artificial intelligence and architecture. And one of the things that you brought up during that conversation was ethics, ethics and AI. And that blew my mind because I had never really thought about the data, where the data comes from, what it's used for, et cetera. So I'm really looking forward to a conversation today to really expand on artificial intelligence in our daily lives. But maybe the place to start is just to take a step back and ask the question, what is artificial intelligence?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeff. I'm going to try to keep it short because that answer alone could take the whole hour.
Sure,
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
first of all, AI is an umbrella term. That actually covers a variety of different applications and approaches to artificial intelligence. And those can be a variety of different neural networks. There's different families of them that have different tasks, and they can be broken down into a variety of even smaller and smaller aspects. So AI covers like a huge family of different ideas that basically, but they have one thing in common. What they have in common is basically that they somehow imitate how certain thought processes in our mind operate and how they can be translated into mathematical algorithms that allows machines to learn. So the main aspect I think that combines all of them is the aspect of learning, whether a machine learns how to recognize what a car is, what a street is, what a tree is, what a person is, to learning about, for example, the fluctuations of the stock market, to medical diagnostics. So there's like a whole series of areas and disciplines that are using neural networks or AI these days to aid in their research and also in their day-to-day operations. This is like the very short version of what AI could be. The shortest one I can come up with.
That's, I realized that as I was asking the question. So, that's a really big question with a really long answer. How do we encounter AI in our daily lives?
Yeah. This is actually quite fascinating. When people talk about AI, they very often have this idea in mind that it's the future in science fiction, and from other data is an AI is going to solve problems for us. And it's not the case. We're in the middle of it already. It's not science fiction anymore. It's around us on a daily basis, from intelligent thermostats to the way how Amazon recommends books to you, to how bank loans are decided, to how parole cases are decided, to, as I mentioned before, medical diagnostics. So there's like a whole, like Alexa is in your house already. Like a lot of people have those today. The way, for example, how um, how spam is filtered, or AI algorithms, or recognizing if, for example, a phone number could be a scam. This is all
Mm.
series of algorithms that actually recognize or learn and thus inform you as a user, but they're quite hidden. So it's not that AI will encounter us in the form of mechanical robots. It's software, and it's everywhere.
Uh, and I assume it's in more and more places all the time. Is that true?
Yes, I mean, um, if you even in your entertainment, it's already full of AI. Like for example, if you use certain filters in, I'm gonna mention companies now here, but there are certain filters that you use for entertainment that paint funny things on your face, right? These are all triggered, of course, and using neural networks to first of all recognize your face and be able to position anything on it. But on the other side,
Mm.
at the same time, this information is, of course, used to train them to become better in facial recognition. So there's like this two-way street. Nothing is for free, also in this new universe of AI applications that are surrounding us. So there's always a sort of exchange going on between you providing data, they learn on the data, and then they provide you with entertainment in some way or the other, or more sinister things that also can be done with them.
Oh, it's like training a pet where you give them a reward and they like it, so they keep doing it. So they're basically doing it to us. Like we think it's funny, so we keep doing it, and they keep learning from us. Yep.
Yeah, but I have to say this does not come from AI. Okay, I mean these are things that are input by humans,
Yeah.
right? It's a human interest. AI in itself is not sinister or anything. It's just a
Nope.
machine, just
But it
technology.
could be. It could be
I
if a
don't.
sinister
I'm not
person
sure.
were programming it. I mean.
That's exactly the problem. That is exactly the problem. The problem is that humans are greedy or evil,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and they project
Yep.
that, of course, onto what they produce.
That was one of the big aha moments for me last time we spoke, because getting my head wrapped around, yeah, it's us, right? It's wherever that data is coming from, wherever it's being gathered from. um from, as I was thinking about it from my point of view, it could be a totally benign idea. Okay, we're going to gather it in this way, but then how is it used, and what's the out? It's used for something, and then there's an output that could maybe, I don't know, range from ineffective to being actually harmful. Does that make sense?
It does, but I have to say that primarily this is still getting used for good reasons. I mean, for example, the progress that has been done in medical diagnostics in the last couple of years alone through the use of artificial neural networks is absolutely amazing. Where suddenly, like the precision of, for example, diagnosing breast cancer has improved to almost 99% accuracy, which is absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and also, for example, President Biden just announcing that he wants to fight cancer. I can tell you that AI is going to play a huge role in making that a reality. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, all those things, as AI can do fantastic, wonderful things when it is used with a beneficial idea in your head. But of course, there's people who are maybe less inclined to use it as something that is beneficial for everybody and beneficial for one or two people. Yeah. So
Right.
in Europe at the moment, there is a lot of conversations going on about how to regulate this technology, like how to make sure that it's used for beneficial use and not abused. Yeah. And I think this is a good direction to go, is to understand that, yes, it is an amazing technology, but it needs to be in some way, shape or form organized or at least surveilled in some way. So we should all they should so AI shouldn't only surveil us. We should surveil that AI too at the same time to make sure that it's used for beneficial use for everybody. But again, we will see where it goes.
Yeah. What are um, what are some beneficial ways that AI is already being used? I don't know if I should say architecture or maybe broaden it out to the built environment, but definitely in the design world.
Well, I mean, it's still early. I mean, there's a lot of talk about using artificial intelligence in architecture. A real massive rollout of it in an application, I have not seen that yet happening, but my feeling tells me that it's only a matter of hours until some company comes up with with a killer app, so to speak, that you can use in architecture, because the applications I've seen so far are based on research that was done, I don't know, 2016, 17, which in computer science certainly is the Stone Age by now. So this is how fast actually this whole thing is evolving. And what I've seen used in architecture are things like, for example, automated construction site surveillance, like or understanding the logistics of a construction site used on based on machine learning. So, for example, you have a camera that is basically looking at the construction site and is able to understand, okay, in the construction site, we currently have this amount of concrete, this amount of steel, this amount of wood, and so on. Like the things and pieces that you need for the construction, it understands this is there and knows exactly the moment where it has to reorder more material so that you have a continuous flow of material in the construction site, which allows you, of course, to have a more fluent construction. It's faster, it's more precise, less material is wasted, and so on. So this is, for example, an interesting application that currently exists and is already out there as a product. But I think we're going to see more of things that are also on the design part. I was just talking with my students before about the possibility, for example, that because neural networks and AI is completely based on data, it means you can use every data to optimize things in construction. Meaning, we have tons of data on structural engineering, for example. Like what's a good structure for a house? Yeah. And we can use a neural network to optimize that system. We can optimize it to the consumption of material, for example. As I mentioned, the example I mentioned before is one little step into that direction, but we could really push it further to make sure that the architecture construction industry works more responsibly with materials, because that has an impact on our environment, and a big one. Yeah? We can optimize plans and sections to the point that we can make the living, we can actually improve the living conditions of millions of people using our networks. So there's still a lot of room to grow here.
Uh, Can I ask a question about the if we have AI or we use AI in our practices? We had a question this morning about what is our liability of the work produced by the AI? Because if it's kind of like our employees in a way, like we're still responsible for their work.
Well, I think that is going to be a question for future lawyers to solve. Because I mean, I don't think we have a solution for it right now. It's a bit of a uncharted territory, specifically in terms of laws. But as I was mentioning before, Europe is already starting to look into those things because it's clear that these sort of solutions have to come quickly before this is completely rolled out, and it's too late to really go into these things. It's going to be a difficult question to solve, though, because like the liability of the work produced by AI, the work that AI does is based on data, right? This data comes from hundreds and thousands of different sources, if not more, and they're extremely varied. So if a mistake happens, who did the mistake? Like, is it in the data set? Is it in the programmer who programmed the AI? Was the architect who asked the wrong question to the AI, let's say, put it that way? So there's like a whole chain of problems here that cannot be solved like stante pede easily, but they will be solved, I think. But it's similar questions that if we talk, for example, in architecture about liability in terms of construction, we talk about something similar in the arts about authorship, like who's the author of the piece of art that I'm buying. Yeah?
Mm.
So similar questions are being discussed in different areas of creative production, no matter if it's architecture, music, art, and so on, poetry, like literature. They all have the same problem. I don't think it's problems, it's questions, interesting questions.
Question. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's a really great point too, because I think the liability question is one that's top of mind for a lot of practicing architects. But I also, one thing that comes up a lot, and I guess this is probably the authorship side of that, but when the architect designs the project and retains the copyright of that, then that's essentially the same thing as authorship when it comes to arts, right? If
Yeah.
if if we're using an AI, who retains the copyright?
Yeah, this is a very interesting point you're talking about here, Jeff, because it's something that I've been discussing with several friends who are involved in this whole process a lot, which is the question whether authorship is still a viable concept in the 21st century if we're using these technologies. If we don't have to rethink what authorship and agency mean. Yeah? Because in fact, it's a concept that was developed in the 18th century when it was still very clear what an author is. You sit down, you have a piece of paper, you start writing on it, you are the author. Right now, we can actually train a neural network with text and then get it to write a text for us that is actually quite convincing. So who's the author now? Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I changed the thing in that for example, I trained a neural network with my own text that I've written throughout my entire life, which is, I was surprised how much it was. Anyways, I put this and I inputted that into a neural network and trained it to write text that basically is convincing to me too, that I could read and say, yes, this is something I would write. And it works. Yeah. But then again, who's the author here? It might be a little bit clearer because it's my data that I use for that. But if you're using, let's say, the entire work of Ernest Hemingway, and you write a new Hemingway, so to speak, and you say you are the author, is it true? Or is it still Hemingway who's the author? He didn't write it. So
Right. Well,
It's getting very complicated.
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, it's going to get more
It's-
complicated. Can I
yeah,
ask one of the questions from this morning? It's kind of a long
yeah,
question. Is that okay?
yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, this has to do with boundaries, and this is from Nicole. She says, um, here, I'm going to put this part. So basically, when is AI intelligent enough to be considered alive? When does our technology become deserving of its own rights? And will we find ourselves in a future situation where we realize that we dehumanized, used, and mistreated a race of intelligent beings? Human history is filled with biases, mistreatment, slavery, and extermination of various races and groups. Will future generations criticize us for devaluing the AI and accuse us of slavery? Will we face AI race riots and segregation? Will our grandchildren be apologizing for our actions and offer reparations? Um, yeah.
Wow.
Will
Yeah, that's
artificial will
perfect
artificial
response.
intelligence become a derogatory term for assuming these beings are artificial?
Okay. That's actually that's a super interesting book, I would say.
A book.
No, I mean that's the outline for a book right there. I mean the thing is that first of all you have to define what is alive,
Right.
right? I mean if you think about if you think about the most simple way to explain life, it self-reproduces, it consumes, and so it reproduces, it consumes, and there was a third category. Which was the third one? Consuming. Yeah, I remember that. But anyways, that's like a super. Oh yes, and it perceives its environment. That's what's important.
Perceived environment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are like the three main like simple categories. And the funny thing is that I think Manuel de Landa once made a joke about it that if this is the three categories, then a copying machine is alive.
Yeah.
But because it somehow perceives its environment, yeah, it consumes paper, yeah, and it replicates, right?
Right. Right.
By definition, yeah.
By definition, a copying machine would be alive.
Mm.
But we still don't consider a copying machine to be intelligent or be able to have a conversation with us. So we don't apply the sort of categories that were just discussed about AI to a copying machine. Now, AI might be a little more complicated. And by the way, as I mentioned before, it's not a machine in the sense of that it has to be contained in a robot or something. It's just software by now. It does exist. It lives in the cloud.
It's not like a physical android that walks around.
No, it's not. An Android might be driven by AI, but in fact, it's maybe more comparable to human spirit or something, right? If it's out of our body, we're dead. Yeah. But all these categories that you mentioned are, in my opinion, this discussion only exists because of science fiction and the way how we think, because those things are topics in science fiction movies and
Right.
in literature.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to differentiate here that what AI actually today is just very, very small elements of our mind, of our how actually our brain works, put into algorithms in mathematics and used for learning processes. It's such a minor element of what our human intelligence actually makes that I don't think you can compare artificial intelligence with human intelligence. It's two different things. Actually, this only comes from the really, really unfortunate naming of this technology in the 1950s. A bunch of guys came together, I think in Princeton or somewhere, had this little conference, and somebody came up with let's call it artificial intelligence. They even admitted that they didn't think too much about it. Yeah, because there were other ideas on the table, like synthetic intelligence and so on, so computational intelligence. But because it has this term artificial intelligence there, we tend to project our own imagination of what intelligence is, and are afraid that a machine could do what we can do as humans, although this not might be the case. Yeah. So I don't think it's very likely that I'm not sure that it's going to be something like an AI race, or that there's going to be reparations, or that it's not the metrics. Okay.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to call you later about that.
Yeah. Okay. You can absolutely do that. Please go ahead. But yes, there's this, like, for example, the example is hell. Yeah, it's a very good one. Yeah. It was just actually fulfilling its commands. It didn't have probably any intelligence. Yeah, it just killed those astronauts because it was supposed to protect something that the astronauts were not supposed to know. Anyways, we're getting too much into the science fiction area. I think
Yeah.
there's
Okay.
way more interesting things happening.
Yeah.
Well, what's more interesting than science fiction in your mind? What's the most interesting thing that's going on in the world of AI right now?
I think the reason why I think that what we're experiencing is more interesting than science fiction, because basically it's bigger than science fiction. Like what we've seen in the last decades in terms of what AI could be and so on, the way how it's currently changing and shaping our environment is absolutely unprecedented. Our entire daily routine is already within a bubble of neural networks and AI. So you just don't notice it. That's the scary but also interesting part about it.
Hmm.
And and I'm very, things that I'm more concerned about than AI becoming sentient is the way how people use it to manipulate other people.
To
Yeah,
manipulate
other
what?
people, to
Oh
manipulate
yeah,
other
other people.
people.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So the possibilities to manipulate it to political gain or economical gain of companies and so on, those are by far more dangerous and like physically dangerous for us than a possible sentient robot. Yeah.
Hmm.
No, I'm
Yeah.
serious. I'm
Right, I
serious.
know. But we were talking about the benefits of having sentient robots. Like you could have a
Yeah.
partner who's a robot who isn't a pain. You could just um, program them to be the way you want them to be all the time, and just
Uh,
put them in the away when you don't want to deal with them. We were talking about that also this morning. Do you think we'll be getting brain chips? We were also talking about that.
Um, on a voluntary basis, why not? But I don't think everyone will get it.
No, because not everybody will be able to afford it, for one thing.
Yeah. But the question
It's
is for what?
For what? Well, I
yeah.
want a database so I don't have to look things up on Google. So that's pretty basic, right? So I could just know everything, which would be kind of boring, I guess, in the end. Um, Also, wait, well, you know what? Someone had an idea of being able to, like, you know how we have automatic driving cars now? So if we had this chip in our brain that could, we could block people in real life so that our chip would know when this person is within, a quarter of a mile from us, and we could just steer clear of that person and not see them ever
Uh,
again.
I see. I think that those things are possible and they're probably going to come, but without a chip. You won't need the hardware for that.
Mm.
Because basically speaking, you're emanating electromagnetic, you're emanating the whole time electrical signals with your body, right? With every touch you do and so on, right? So if I would be rather interested in using this idea without having the necessity to implant anything or change anything on your body,
Mm.
except maybe things that improve your health, for example, and things like that,
Yeah,
right?
I guess that's a better use for a chip
Uh,
than avoiding your
y-
ex.
and you said something a minute ago, Catherine, about not everybody would be able to afford it. Is
Mm.
that part of the problem? Does AI and the use of AI tools have the potential to exacerbate the wage or the wealth gap? Not only in in pure financial terms, but also and Tara is asking a good question here. What implications does AI have on city planning? Does the use of AI, I used an example the other day. What if you had an AI that was somehow a zoning tool? And we all know that there's so many examples of redlining and zoning created to exclude people or devalue certain areas. What if that's the data that's feeding the AI? Is that part of the problem that we're talking about in terms of ethics and the output of it?
Yeah. The aspect of what data you're feeding an AI to learn is definitely an important one, and the quality of the data also defines absolutely what the outcome will be of whatever you're feeding it. So, for example, to Tara's question in terms of implicating or using city planning or existing cities as a data set for urban design, that's absolutely possible. I can, and we have done this already, by the way, like in a very primitive way, but it was successful. For example, saying, okay, what if we take all the features of the number one city in the world in all the rankings about quality of living, which is Vienna, most of the
Ah,
time.
I thought it.
Yeah,
Okay, I thought it was
Mel-
Boston. No.
no, Melbourne
Mhm.
occasionally, but they somehow fight for the first and second place. So I'm gonna take the satellite images of Vienna, satellite images of Melbourne, train a neural network to understand those features, and then, for example, style transfer that onto a site that is empty for a new city. You can do that, and we have done this already. The main problem here is that in itself, this process that we use is primarily visual, right? It does not understand like why, for example, the public transportation system in Vienna is so good, yeah, or why the like the deeper things that are important for urban planning, right? That you have to understand how the transportation works, how the living conditions are, how far things are from each other, like how far is the next doctor from an apartment building, or how far is the next supermarket from an apartment building, without having to drive there with your car, right? What is a good pedestrian city? Yeah. So this means that what we did was an interesting experiment, but it also unveils that problem. So these experiments have to be done first, yeah, and then you can learn like what's the next step for a neural network to learn about urban planning to improve it. And if there's one thing that AI can do really well, is optimize. Yeah, so we can optimize those conditions for urban planning.
So that's pretty fascinating. So what you're saying is, if we put Vienna in and we put Melbourne in, or in any other examples, it can, the AI is going to learn based on data, based on digital, but it's not going to learn based on why. Why is this the way it is? It's just going to take what it is and extrapolate from there. Is that accurate? It
Well,
doesn't understand the
extrapolation.
reasons behind.
There's always this discussion about interpolation and extrapolation. So AI is really
Mm.
good at interpolating. It's not that good in extrapolating. Humans are still better in that area. But I think a combination between the two is what could provide a well-designed result, no matter if it's a car or a city. Yeah. Can I answer a couple of questions here in the
Yeah,
chat?
Yeah.
definitely.
So I'm a bit confused about Rod Werner's comments here about Vienna now, but in the 40s, they welcomed the Nazis. Built environments are not necessarily the reason to be the best place to live. I don't know what one has to do with the other. I don't know if you've ever heard about the Red Vienna, which was the 30s before the Nazis came, which started actually the development that we still have today in terms of having really great social housing. So there is more layers to here than just saying Nazis were there. That's not fair. And the other one, what are the ethical implications of AI? Thank you very much, Christian Nielsen Palacios, because I think that's like the main core thing we're discussing here today, and I would like to talk a little bit about that. So ethical implications are, especially when it's about AI, is questions like, for example, where does the data come from that we're using to train neural networks? So, for example, there's this example of one of the largest data sets in use called ImageNet, which is the basis, for example, for a majority of automated car applications, facial recognition, things like that. And how this data set was put together is that it was using a service called the mechanical turk. Yeah? And the mechanical turk sounds like it would be an AI that basically labels your images. But that's not what happens here. What happens here is that you upload your images to this label, and then those images go to a farm in India where there is people sitting around. We're getting paid pennies per image that they label, yeah, in accord work. So the more images they label, the more they earn, of course, yeah. Which also leads to a lot of problems, right? I mean, not only the sort of underpaid kind of labor here, which is unfairly paid, but at the same time also you have these people who are labeling things that they might not understand entirely or that they culturally do not understand, which leads to a lot of biases in those data sets. Yeah? The first data sets, for example, were done around Silicon Valley. Yeah? So they're all biased towards white, male, European thinking. Yeah? So there's like this whole ethical implication here about cultural biases, racial biases, and so on and so forth, which we unfortunately have inherited now until today from those beginning in the 50s. Yeah. So if we want to talk about ethical use of AI, we really need to understand more clearly where does the data come from, how was it generated, why was it generated that way, and how we can create data sets that are more culturally inclusive, racially diverse, and so on and so forth. that are like the ethical questions that not only touch on architecture, they touch on any field where neural networks are getting used. So thank you, Christian, a lot for that question. It was a short answer. I could talk more about this, but I think it's important, for me at least, it's very important to talk about it because I'm blatantly aware that in architecture there is absolutely no sentiment for what data sets actually do and why they're important and why there's an ethical discussion about them. Why we need that discussion. Yeah, it's the same with plans. Like, where does these plans come from? Are they? This is only Western architecture. This is only Western sections. So I'm actually trying to somehow make my contribution with doing something called the Common House dataset, which is a dataset about apartment plans, where we're intentionally trying to get people from all over the world to annotate those, not only from Michigan, not only from the US, but from everywhere in the world. And people have been contributing to this. And this is going to help to create a data set that is more culturally inclusive and more diverse. It does not only give us a bias towards a specific direction of architecture, because it would just continue what we've been doing in the last 100 years, which is basically to emphasize the dominance of Western architecture in the world.
So when you're gathering that data from all over the world for that project, for that type of design, do you see in the future, in the way that architects use AI, do you see that being governed isn't the right word, but do you see that driven at the firm level or at the Autodesk level, or some other provider, or is there, I hate to say this, but one AI to rule them all? Where do you see that? Is my firm going to develop our own AI, or are we going to buy somebody else's, or how do you see that working in the future?
I think it's going to be a combination between different things. I don't think there's going to be like just one solution, one size fits all. I don't think that actually works. And I think the current precedent of what they're doing in computer science might be a hint of what's going to happen. Like, there's like this enormous family of different GitHub repositories and Google Colab solutions. It's like there's different algorithms for different ideas. And humans are still really good in developing those things and thinking about variations, right? And if we as architecture disciplines can learn anything from computer science and data science and so on, is the way how they share information between each other to make progress, right? Um, so we are gonna develop customized solutions to neural networks for different problems, and this can be on the company level. This can be also on the level of just a very small boutique office with 3-4 people. If AI is good for something, it is for empowering artists, architects, and designers, because it gives them a technology at their hand which can make them compete with larger players. Yeah. So in terms of productivity, speed, and so on. Yeah. So there is something really interesting going on there. And actually, Rod Werner's question about AI, can AI resist late market capitalism, definitely also goes specifically in this direction that I was talking right now, which is, if there is no one size fits all, there's like a variety of possibilities to work with it. I'm actually quite a believer that what we're seeing right now is probably a strange phase where we're trying to get to overcome the concept of capitalism, which were developed in the 1920s and 1930s, and rather understand that we're living in the 21st century in a completely different environment to when those ideas were created. So I'm waiting for somebody to reinvent the economic system outside a capitalistic system or idea. I don't think there's a solution yet there, but even AI could help to develop this idea of a new economy that allows us to maybe live our lives in a more individualistic way, and still be able to make a living, right? So this is going to be quite interesting in the upcoming time. But again, there is no one size fits all solution. There's going to be different ways to go ahead with this, even down to the level that somebody just decides, you know what, I'm going to make my living only labeling. Who knows? Yeah.
Is the what's the biggest barrier? What's the biggest challenge? Is it the data collection? I'm thinking about if I have an AI versus if there's a bigger one, and how you were talking about gathering input from all over the world. Is the gathering of that data the biggest challenge, or is that just thinking too small?
I think it might be a bit too small. I think the more data we have, the better those systems operate, and also the more equitable they become. If the data is restricted and small, that's when things become undertrained, and the undertraining really falsifies results and really gives you emphasis or bias into a specific direction. So I think that that's why I've been saying we as architects have to band together and create those data sets together. I mean, I'm really trying to convince people to do this. It's pretty hard, but if we don't band together and really understand how we can use the wealth of information that we have, considering that we are like a 3,000 plus year old discipline, it's ridiculous that we have not actually, it's so low hanging fruit, but we have to band together to do this. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bunch of people, including myself, hopefully, who are going to control this. Yeah. So either you want me to control it, or you help me to grow it. It's just very bluntly said. But the problem is definitely the data. I think that the algorithms, there's so many incredible people out there thinking about new possibilities to work with this. I'm not worried about that, but I'm worried about how to get to the data in a fair and good way.
Yeah, that to me, I think also seems like the most worrisome thing is what's going into this. Joseph has a question you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what about authorship and the threat to the user?
The question is, why do you consider it a threat? I mean, I think that humans are a little bit too self-infatuated, right? I mean, we are good, yeah, but it doesn't mean that we are the end of all means and thinking, right? I mean, at the moment, I'd rather consider that it's a possibility to expand our abilities, not to think of restricting them for ourselves. So I wouldn't think of AI as a competition or anything like this. First of all, it doesn't know what competition is. It's us again projecting our own fears into a machine, right? So I think we need to overcome these ideas of these machines being sentient and a competition to us, and oh my God, they're going to take away my authorship. Rather think of it as a tool that helps you to expand your own ideas. Whether this means that you're the author or not, I don't know if this is so important at all, right? I mean, again, I think that the concept of authorship is outdated, that it's a concept from the 18th century that we're obviously currently surviving, yeah? It doesn't mean that it's going to be, no one's going to forbid you to sit down and paint a painting on your own, even in the future, yeah? But you can get used to the fact that creative work can involve also other players than only humans. Yeah. And again, for example, also I'm not convinced that AI can be creative at all. It's again ourselves projecting our own creativity into the results that the machine is giving us, right? So there is no need to be afraid about, being disposed as a human being. Let me put it that way, or displaced is probably the better term. I think that we need to, first of all, reconsider what authorship is, what copyrights are, and how we can actually operate in this new world. By the way, I mean, if you think about it, authorship is quite a relatively new concept in the arts, right? I mean, it's only 300 years old. People like Leonardo da Vinci didn't care about authorship. Michelangelo didn't care about authorship. Giotto didn't care about authorship. So why do we care so much about it? It doesn't devalue their artistic production at all. Or is Leonardo less a good artist because he didn't care about authorship? I don't think so.
Well, as far as that goes, though, in an architecture office, is there really one author of anything? I mean, we all work
No,
on it together, so
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
And
Hmm.
ultimately, we're just talking about a tool, right? Or a tool set, maybe. And how do we
It's a
leverage the tools?
yeah. I mean, if you're really critical, it's a pile of really clever algorithms. That's it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
our offices are already full of software, so um, maybe this is a little bit more advanced or a lot more advanced.
It is definitely advanced, but and it definitely opens up amazing possibilities for us as designers and architects, artists, and so on. So good artists, for example, they're all amazed about this, right? They're not afraid of it at all. Like really good artists. I'm not talking. Well, anyway, they basically, because they entails absolutely what Picasso already said. Picasso said, good artists copy, great artists steal. And that's exactly what these neural networks do. They steal from our whole history of design or the art, and in the process create something amazing. Yeah.
And I think when we think about it that way, um, and thinking of it as a tool, using it as a tool. I wonder. We talked with Clifton Harness a couple of weeks ago, who's one of the co-founders of TestFit. And I found that conversation fascinating because it's a generative design tool focused on multifamily, and theoretically it helps you consider more and more unit mixes and site plans and so on and so forth. If we're leveraging the tool, does it actually, rather than this fearful idea of displacing the architect, does it actually help us leverage our value in the right places better if we're using the tools?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. That's what I was trying to say before when I was saying that it expands our possibilities as
Yeah.
creatives or architects or designers or artists. So if you're open-minded and understand that this is an opportunity, not a threat, then it is very valuable for you. I mean, for me, it was absolutely amazing to discover these things. I would not change it anytime. But at the same time, as soon as you start to dig deeper into this tool set, and you start to be thinking about it in more critical ways, that's when things like authorship and agency and the ethics of AI and the way how to interact something along. That's, I think, a natural process. And everyone who starts working with AI today will encounter these questions sooner or later. And I think it is not only a practical problem. It's a problem that will definitely also influence our whole discourse of this discipline. Like how do we think about building? How do we think about planning? How do we think about representation, both as image and as political idea? So yeah, it's definitely something that opens doors to conversations that we didn't have yet in architecture, and I think are very timely and very important for the 21st century.
Well,
Ah, just a quick one. How far? Yeah, this question
yeah,
is good.
that's a
How
question
far
we
are
all
we
want to know
with
the answer to.
completing our construction doctorate?
Hopefully 2 weeks.
I just wanted to say, give me a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that would be great. We would all love that, I think, or many of us. No, how long really do you think?
I don't think we are far, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, look, for example, the emergence of the text-to-image things we saw this summer with Mid Journey. I thought last year that we're like, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years away from that. And suddenly it just took months. So the idea of completing construction documents, for example, I think that just needs a bit of. I mean, if somebody funds you to do this, yeah, and gives you like $3 million to research this properly and do it, you can have it next year.
Okay.
It's just a matter of doing it.
Right. Like everything. Like a lot
Yeah.
of things. Like a lot of things. Okay.
Muted myself. So it's just a matter of time and I guess a matter of money and willpower. Where do you think, practically speaking, AI has the first impact, the first real impact in the architecture office in
I
terms
think that,
of the work?
yeah, that already happened. I mean, we built already a project based on AI design, and it's done and finished. So it has already impact on the discipline and fielding. There's people out there who are already doing competition entries with Midjourney, yeah, because it can quickly generate wonderful images. So we're going to see more and more of that happening. I'm pretty sure it's going to have the biggest impact for now in the competition phase of projects. But it will, because we already have that amazing platform of computational tools in architecture, it will very quickly move into the existing platforms like Grasshopper, Maya, Rhino, and of course building information modeling processes. So building information modeling in itself is already a low-level form of artificial intelligence. But if we input really like proper machine learning processes and combine with building information modeling, we can come up with really fascinating ways to push for the construction industry.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's fascinating. Well, this is, you know, I would love to keep having these conversations because I mean, this is, you're headed out on a book tour, right? You said it
Yes.
starts tomorrow. Um, and it's not just the beginning. You've obviously been immersed in this for a long time, but it feels like we're on the precipice of something, something big. So tell us about the book tour, and the book that it's based on, and then tell us what's next.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. So the book is called Neural Architecture, Design and Artificial Intelligence, and basically summarizes some of the ideas and lectures and also papers that I've written in the last 3-4 years about the topic of AI and architecture in a form that becomes really a book that tells the story from, let's say, the emergence of neural networks. It actually tries to cover two specific areas. On the one side, this is the theoretical problems that come along with using these neural networks, specifically understanding it within the history and trajectory of architecture, and what's the main difference behind it, how it might influence a variety of different fields, and it touches on a variety of topics until at the very end of the book it also discusses, for example, the political impact of these novel tools. Like what does it mean for work? What does it mean for, you know, your education and so on. And the book tour is going to take place in a variety of different schools throughout the United States. So there's confirmations from UPenn, Harvard, and so on. And then from there it goes over to Europe. There's also several schools that are confirmed in Europe, the ETH in Zurich, ICT in Stuttgart, the Angewandte in Vienna. So there's like a variety of stations there too. Get in touch with me if you wanted to come to your place and talk about the book in more detail than I did today in a couple of minutes. I'm more than happy to join you and have a nice conversation about it.
That's fantastic. I'm sure that's exciting, and you know, I would love to continue the conversation. What's on the horizon? What's after the book tour is over? Are you working on another book now, or do you have to take a breath and and think about what's next after
There,
that?
there's so much happening that there is no way to have a break right now. So there's actually two books currently in the making. One is almost finished, which is going to be published with Springer, called Architecture in the Age of Intelligent Machines, which basically covers the technical side of AI, like really goes into what algorithms are used and how and why that comes from and so on. So if neural architecture was more the sort of theoretically broader book, then the architecture in the intelligent machines is focused really on the technical part of it. And then I'm working on a book proposal that actually encapsulates what happened in the last summer in terms of the emergence of just the image because it exploded. It's incredible. I mean, you cannot open any social media without seeing images generated in Midjourney or similar things. And of course, the work in the lab. Oh, and two more things there. See, I'm really, it's too much stuff on that. We are opening an exhibition at Taubman College November 2nd called Neural Architecture, which is going to collect several positions of different architects working in this area. It's going to be on show at the annex of Taubman College at the University of Michigan. And there is a keynote lecture that night by Lev Menovich, who I consider one of the most important people in considering the cultural implications of AI. And then on the following day, on the 3rd, there's going to be a symposium, neural architecture, with a whole group of people who are involved in this topic. It's going to be super exciting and really looking forward to that. So you see there's a lot of activities now, even if the book is finished. There's a lot more to come.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah, it does. I think explosion is a pretty good descriptor. Matias, thank you very much for this conversation, and we really value learning, getting the insights and learning from all of your knowledge of this, and we look forward to following the journey. And we may have to have you back again to keep us updated on artificial intelligence and architecture. So thanks very much, and to your
Absolutely.
students at the University of Michigan, thanks for joining us for this conversation today. Good luck on the quiz. To all of the Entree Architect community, the Context and Clarity community, we'll conduct a quiz tomorrow, and and we'll grade you on this conversation as well. So,
Okay.
so yeah, yeah. So again, thank you, Matias. We really appreciate you for this, and everybody that's out there in our audience. I say this just about every week. Thank you for making context and clarity a thing, because without you, without this interest in these conversations, we wouldn't be talking to Matias right now. So I appreciate you for continuing to show up and participate in these conversations. My encouragement, as always, for all of you is please be well, stay safe, keep those around you safe and well. It's still a crazy world out there. Take a little bit of time to breathe, relax, and find a way to rejuvenate, because we do this every day. You've got to pace yourself. And thanks for going along this journey with us. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me.